First off, I would like to thank God Almighty for giving everybody so much and me so little. I hate you. I hate you. I don't even know you, and I hate your guts. I hope all the bad things in life happen to you and nobody else but you.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I splurged $10 on this basically fake microphone. It doesn't record audio or anything like that. And I splurged on a little LED light. I feel like in the commentary community, everyone has one or both of these things. And I must say, I understand now why so many people hold microphones in their videos. It feels way more theatrical. Like, I'm the only one talking, guys. I have the microphone. You in the back, zip it. You can talk after everyone's left because no one cares what you have to say. Anyways, fancy new equipment aside, today's video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the nature of hate on the internet. I'm going to talk about some of the ways I feel like social media has changed the way we interact with others and view other people. I'm also going to talk about a few reasons why people experience hatred, though of course this is not going to be an exhaustive video. I'm also not going to be talking about the more intense forms of hatred, aka genocide. I would love to do like a whole 40-hour documentary about the ins and outs of the emotions of hate and how it's been expressed historically and all of that, but honestly, that's obviously way over my head. And so this video is going to be more of a kind of stream of consciousness style, less produced video exploring some of my thoughts on hate, why people hate, and hatred on the internet. Everyone experiences hatred to varying degrees, whether it's simply, I hate that outfit, it's so ugly, versus hating the whole world and wanting everyone within it to die. And people experience hatred for different periods of time. For instance, some people are very consumed by hate and they just experience it 24/7, which is extremely exhausting. And other people only have it or experience it in fleeting moments, or for instance, if somebody hurts them, then they might hate that person in turn. But to start it off, I do want to say, at least in my experience, what the emotional state is that kind of causes me to be the most hateful when I'm in that mindset. And that's usually when I'm feeling extremely insecure, inferior, like a failure. I'm going down that self-hatred rabbit hole, and it just makes me hate the whole world around me. I'm so miserable, and I hate seeing like anything going on in the world, whether it's actual tragedies, which I'll get to later, or whether it's just other people being happy when I'm not. What gave me the idea for this video was a few weeks ago when I was in a very bad downward spiral, and I was feeling very depressed and like not able to get out of bed and whatnot, and I looked out the window and it had been raining a couple days prior, and in front of my building is a little fire pit. And the fire pit was full of water and birds were drinking from it and bathing in it and looking like they were having the best time ever. And the immediate urge I had was just to go out and just flip the fire pit over so the birds couldn't have a good time. Like, fuck you birds, how dare you be happy? Like, I was genuinely offended that these birds were happy and I wasn't. I'm just like, it's that feeling of if I can't have it, no one can. And if I'm not happy, everyone else needs to be miserable too. And of course, that was just an impulse and a reflection of my mental state at the time. I did not flip the fire pit over. I let the birds enjoy their little bath. But the point of that anecdote is that one of the reasons a lot of people experience hate is that they are just upset that other people are happy or being successful or having a good time when they're not, and they just don't feel like it's fair, and you just kind of feel vindictive and greedy, really, because you're putting yourself first and your own negativity above that other person's life when they're literally doing nothing to you. But since I realize I'm going to sound kind of like a bad person in this video, I have started going to therapy since then. It's been going well, and I will share a little bit of advice at the end. But I do think it's really easy to hate others when you hate yourself because you're just already absorbed by hatred, and it's already coloring all the thoughts that you have and the way that you're viewing the world. And also when you're feeling helpless, you're constantly seeking other people to blame or the world at large to blame for your emotions and your feelings. And it's very easy to fall in the trap of if only I had XYZ, or if only the world was like XYZ, then I'd be happy, even though that's obviously not true. And externalizing the locus of control like that is really just going to help you stew in your misery, but even just make it worse because now you're just blaming the world for your problems. And again, with feelings of inferiority, this is, for instance, people who are single and they get upset when they see happy couples at the park and so on. Or if you're having trouble bearing children or getting pregnant or whatever, you might really hate it when you find out that some like 16-year-old got pregnant and you're like, wow, screw you. Like, you don't even want a kid, like, and here I am barren. Like, that's not fair. Like, it's very easy to fall into hate no matter who you are, and everyone experiences it sometimes, like I said. But the reason I bring up those feelings of inferiority inferiority and insecurity and self-hatred and whatnot at the beginning is because I feel like this is probably the emotional state most people are in before they start spreading hatred online, which is going to be the main focus of this video. For me personally, I've never left a hate comment on the internet or tried to ruin someone's day or, like, to my knowledge, bullied somebody online, but obviously it's something that happens a lot, and I think the nature of the internet has really led to a rise in vitriol or expressed outward vitriol. Obviously, I can't say that hatred as a whole is at its peak right now in human history because I don't know, like, it's always very present and prominent. Like I said at the beginning, genocides, exterminations, like, this is happening all the time, including right now. Like, hatred is very widespread. A lot of humans are evil, and every human has the capacity for evil. So it's really hard to kind of quantify hatred at any given time in the world. But I will say that the way in which hatred is expressed online and the audacity that people have behind their little anonymous profile pics in order to say the things that they would say, I think is pretty fascinating, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here. So for the first aspect of hatred on the internet I want to talk about is the anonymity, of course, because when people are hiding behind a fake name and profile, it really gives them the power to say anything that they want without fear of, say, getting beaten up like you would if you were in a bar or something, talking to someone's face, or ruining your social reputation, because obviously people don't really like it if you're being a cunt. As you guys know, I literally never go on Twitter. Whenever I do, it throws me into, like, a very deep depression. But the things people say on there, it's like I can't even imagine someone in real life saying that, like, to someone's face. And I do think a lot of people make a sport out of it, like internet trolls. I think it's just very entertaining for them in some kind of sadistic way to try and upset people as much as possible.
This is my daughter at the triathlon today. Go, little girl.
Your daughter has a mustache! What the hell is wrong with your ovaries, bitch?
But the reason I think the internet gives rise to this kind of thing is that even though it's social, it doesn't feel personal. For instance, when you're watching, like, me on your screen right now and here, like, I'm literally two-dimensional. I'm not like a person. Like, it's not like you're actually talking to a person. And therefore, if something about me makes you upset in some way, like you hate the way I look, or maybe I remind you of someone that you hate and it's, like, upsetting to you, then it's very easy to just go down below and say something very rude and not feel like you're actually saying that to me. And thankfully, I'm pretty fortunate. I feel like I don't get too much hate. Like, some of my videos, of course, get more than others, but because my channel is so small and most of my subscribers are extremely thoughtful, like, literally you guys leave the best comments, it's not so much of an issue for me. But I do think that that is one of the things about the internet that makes people more hateful, the fact that it's not really an interpersonal interaction, and the fact that you can easily hide behind an anonymous barrier and say literally anything that you want. The other aspect of anonymity and dehumanization online in regards to, like, hatred and bullying, of course, is cancel culture, which I always talk about, but it bothers me so much more than straight up hate comments. Like, if you hate someone, like, if someone hated me and they just straight up said that, I'd respect that a lot more than some social justice warrior pretending like they're doing the right thing by calling me out when they're literally just trying to ruin my life. And of course, I haven't experienced being canceled or anything like that. I'm a very small channel, small YouTuber. But of course, on Twitter, the mob is always going after one person to the next, to the next, to the next, often in the span of, like, hours. Like, they're never exhausted, and they're always trying to basically ruin someone's life. Getting them fired isn't enough. Then you have to dox them. Doxing them's not enough. Now you have to start calling out their family. That's not enough. So now you gotta start posting more private information about them. And you gotta smear their name. You gotta do all this stuff. Like the power that the horde of anonymous people has on, like, actual individuals' lives is literally crazy. And obviously mob mentality has existed throughout all of time, but I don't think it's ever been this amplified. Like, literally, if you do something wrong and you have any sense of a presence on the internet, people from all over the world will be, like, preying on your downfall, trying to ruin your life, calling you the most abhorrent names, and literally not feeling bad about it because they're hiding behind the guise of justice. And that's something that is very unique to the internet age. Obviously, it's something that I can't stand because I'm always bitching about it. But that's another one of those things where I'm always wondering what is going through this person's head. Is it just an immediate reaction? Are you actually thinking it through? If someone is trying to cancel someone and is publicly humiliating them for something, and immediately you're one of the people in the mob who goes over to attack that person, like, if that's been you at any point in time, what is your thought process as that's happening? Do you feel like a pawn? Because that's what it looks like to the outside. Like, you're literally just a bee in a swarm of bees. Like, how does it feel as an individual? I am, like, literally so curious, and not even judging here. Like, I'm so curious. But moving on from hate comments and tweets, I do want to speculate on some more interesting aspects of online hate that I've seen. One of those I think is less about individual actors and more about what those individual actors represent. And I think the hatred around these representations can kind of be very interesting in terms of society and societal values. For instance, apparently the most popular TikTok in the world is this one, which the music will be copyrighted for, but basically it's just a young woman lip syncing, as you would expect for TikTok. Apparently this is all the rage, but it's the most viewed TikTok in the world. The woman has like 60 million followers or whatever, and has presumably gotten very rich and famous off of this, even though I feel like objectively it doesn't take much talent or skill to be able to do that. You really just have to be beautiful and be in the right place at the right time for that to happen to you. And naturally, when anyone rises to fame, but particularly in such a curious instance like this, it's met with a lot of hate, a lot of people expressing their disgust and dismay that this person is so popular when she literally seems talentless. I don't want to say she's talentless, and I don't want to say her TikTok has no value, because obviously millions of people have been entertained by it somehow. But I think for most people, the amount of praise and attention and money she has made off of these TikToks in proportion to the amount of skill required is very out of whack and alignment. And I think the reason a lot of people hate her, I think it's basically a larger dissatisfaction with how far away when it comes to fame we've gone from fame being based on skill, talent, value, etc., to it seeming absolutely arbitrary in terms of who gets famous or not, particularly when there are so many really talented artists, writers, cinematographers, woodworkers, architects, like everyone and so on, who don't necessarily get any fame or recognition, or even get their projects fulfilled because the projects aren't financially feasible or not enough people give it attention or recognize its worth and so on. And so I think a lot of hatred expressed online, again, isn't necessarily about individual actors, but more so these wider phenomenon. But generally speaking, I think most people experience hate on social media when it triggers an insecurity in some way. And I think social media in particular is fantastic at triggering people's insecurities because everyone looks so put together online. Like no one ever showcases, well, hardly ever, the downsides of their lives. It's mostly just like, oh, look at me being all pretty and edited, and look at my nice house that I bought at the age of 20, and look at my beautiful family and my golden retriever, and we're all so happy, and you're not. Like, they're not actually saying the last part to you, but that's what it feels like, I think, for a lot of people when they're scrolling through their social media feeds or watching a lot of YouTubers who are just very glamorous and happy seeming. I think it can be hard not to experience waves of jealousy or anger when it feels like your life is behind and you're falling behind, and everyone else is better and prettier and nicer and more famous than you, and no one knows who you are and no one cares about you and blah blah blah. And honestly, I can see how people, particularly young people, might feel like they should leave a hate comment and try to take this person down a peg because they're bringing out your insecurities and you don't like it. Everyone knows that hate comes with the territory of success, regardless of what that success is. Whether it's you winning the Nobel Peace Prize for curing cancer, I bet you there are going to be people who will hate you even if you do that, to getting famous for relatively no reason or just for looking attractive or whatnot on Instagram or TikTok. The more people exposed to you, the more people who are going to feel hate, and the more likely they probably are going to be to express that hate towards you because, number one, you're probably not going to see it anyway. And number two, you're signaling to more people how upset you are. For instance, if you're leaving a comment on an Instagram model's page and she has 1 million followers, potentially 1 million people could see your comment. And that might make you feel more powerful and so on, or seen or whatever, validated for your feelings. I'm not sure. I'm obviously being an armchair psychologist here. But ultimately, of course, I think number one, you should be watching your media consumption and what you're consuming and whether it's actually bettering your life. But number two, if you feel like somebody is causing or triggering an insecurity in yourself, instead of hating on that person, which literally solves nothing, my best advice would be to actually challenge that spiral of negativity and insecurity that you're facing, and then use that information to better your life and improve your life. I mean, when I've experienced insecurity or jealousy online, it's really only with people who I feel are similar to me in some way, but better. Like there was a YouTuber who I was watching recently, I'm not gonna say who, but she looks similar to me. She's just like a little bit more attractive, but like we have similar features. And she makes really smart, well thought out content. I wish my content was as good as hers, but she also has a lot of fans. And like these things in combination, like I recall watching her and like hoping in my head that she would say something stupid, so that way, you know, I wouldn't feel as inferior to her. But these are only waves of feelings, you guys. Like I'm not that fucked up, but Basically what I do now when I experience those feelings is instead of hating, I just try to learn from that person, you know? And I know everyone says this, but it's like, it can be hard to implement until you kind of figure it out for yourself. But basically now when I get triggered by someone being better than me and I start going through that negative spiral of, oh, I'll never be like this, I'll never make content like this, I should just give up because I'm never gonna be good as her, I just stop myself and recognize those feelings for what they are, which is that I'm actually just upset at myself because I haven't been working very hard lately, or I'm not at the skill level I'd like to be at yet, for example. And so instead of hating this random stranger for no reason, I'm just going to learn from the content. What is she doing right? You know, what do I appreciate about this? What can I implement into my own videos and so on? Like talking into a microphone. Just kidding. She doesn't talk into a microphone, but you know. But basically saying something mean to someone or trying to devalue someone who you don't even know just because you're feeling insecure is just pretty much objectively the wrong way to go about things. But I'm gonna put a pin in this now and talk about it more at the end because I do have some kind of tools or experience in terms of how to deal with those internal negative thoughts. But for the next segment of this section, I want to talk about preying on somebody's downfall. This is actually kind of the inspiration for this video besides the bird bath story and I wish I could find the meme, but I literally looked everywhere and I can't, but it was something like, I'm a hater for real, like preying on everyone's downfall. Like, if you're happy and you're better than me, I genuinely want you to suffer. Like, it was some kind of meme like that, but I loved it because it was just so honest. Because that's how I imagine every hater to be on the inside, but no one ever just outwardly says that. And that's what kind of got me thinking about the psychology of a hater and so on and so forth. But the phrase I want to talk about from that meme is the preying on someone's downfall, which is basically, as it sounds, it's wanting someone who's successful to fail. I'm guessing this is the feeling people have who want other people to be canceled and have their careers ruined. And this pretty clearly stems from insecurity or inferiority. Someone else is doing better than you and you can't stand it, so you just want them to fail or to lose everything. And I think a very clear example of this happening here on YouTube is the Ace family. And if you're like me and you didn't really know who this family was until you watched some random commentary YouTuber talking about it, basically they're a family vlogger and prank channel whose fame is based on presenting a perfect life of family happiness, wealth, and success. After being caught in a series of lies and having their $10 million home foreclosed while lying about it the entire time, they've basically gone broke and are caught up in 9 different lawsuits, and basically all the drama YouTube channels have had a field day over this. But I think the emotional response of many people in regards to their downfall is expressed in Sunny V2's aptly titled, "The Ace Family Deserve Their Downfall."
There's something that's just universally satisfying about seeing the Ace family's empire crumble. Maybe it was because we could sense that it was to some extent built on lies, and therefore it feels as though we've witnessed an example of karma to see it all come to a messy end. Austin and Catherine McBroom built their empire on sand, with debt, with lies, and with most important of all, ego. The Ace family's need to maintain a public image as a happy, problem-free family was the basis for all their success, but was simultaneously the reason for their catastrophic fall.
And I think the other thing people really liked about this case was that it also just exposed the fakeness of social media, that you can just lie about your wealth and so on and look so perfect when behind the scenes actually everything is going wrong. I think that's just something humans like. I feel like that's probably a trope that's been around for all of human history and storytelling, which is that the whole beautiful, perfect family actually has very dark secrets that no one knows about, but if they did, they'd realize this perfect family isn't so perfect after all. I feel like most people like stories like that, but preying on people's downfall has definitely been heightened in the internet age, again, because of social media, because it looks like everyone has their lives together, because people become successful for the most random reasons, and you get to hide anonymously behind a screen and hate on people and get social validation and affirmation from other people who hate on those people. You can kind of bind together with other people and commiserate. I think there are just so many factors that have really altered the way hatred is expressed online, and I think the whole thing is extremely interesting. Obviously, this video can't be too exhaustive, so I am going to move on right now. But for the last point of this section, I will talk about the attractiveness thing, because I do think some people just hate people who are attractive because they either wish they could be like them or they wish they could be with them, and you can't. And again, that just triggers inferiority and insecurity and so on. And particularly, of course, with young women, it's very easy for them to compare themselves to others online or models and magazines and so on. If you want to explore that more and you haven't seen my Gen Z mental health video, I'll recommend that because I talk about it in depth in that video. But moving on to the next section, it's not always people below you who hate, People always say that haters are always below the people that they're hating, and generally speaking, this is true. If you're hating on somebody, you are putting power over them. Number one, you're blaming them for how you feel. Number two, you're trying to get a response or have an effect on their life in some way. And basically that's just seen as very beta behavior. I don't know a better word for it than like beta, but you're literally giving someone power over you, even if you're trying to take away their power by being hateful. But I do want to say it's not always people below you who hate on you. And to illustrate that, I have a little story for you. When I was in middle school, I was like 12 or 13. Facebook had come out like a year or two prior, and maybe like 1/3 to 1/2 of the student body at my school was on Facebook. And I remember one day being on Facebook at nighttime, and the popular girls at my school, about 3 of them or 4, uploaded this video of themselves going through Facebook and making fun of the people in their feed, which were like me and my classmates. And I don't know why they decided to upload it, but they were all just like, ew, like her outfit and like blah, 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 like making fun of people's appearances and so on, not naming any names, but it was very obvious given the size of Facebook at the time who they were talking about, because we all went to school together and saw the same things. But it was literally just a video of them hating on these people who were not even popular. And a lot of people, of course, got very offended and angry and were like, take this down, and they did. Personally, I thought it was pretty iconic, but maybe that's because I'd give anything to be stomped on and berated by a popular mean girl. Don't shame me for that. But what I loved about that video and that experience is that it made me realize that even the popular girls who everyone else looks up to and everyone else wants to be, they get insecure too, and they literally have to talk shit about the people below them in order to retain that feeling of superiority. The other reason I really loved it is because everyone always suspects that the popular girls get together and talk trash on everyone, but that was like actual video proof that they really do that. I just thought it was super fascinating. I still do. And again, I feel like it was just totally iconic. They took the video down immediately because everyone got really mad, but whatever. But what that story also reminds me of that I always think is good to keep in mind is that literally models are the most insecure about their bodies, like high fashion models and Instagram models and all of that. And it makes sense because their entire value and worth and career and money is all based up on how they look. And of course they hate on the girls who are prettier than them because those girls can literally take their jobs and get booked and you won't because they're hotter than you. But I feel like if you're a really insecure person, you're probably hating on everyone because your position is so precarious. And in the same way that popular girls will talk shit about girls who are not popular, it's important to keep in mind that people who have it all also oftentimes hate on other people because they're insecure and are afraid of losing whatever it is that they have. Hate goes both ways. It's not just bottom up. But for this next section, I want to talk about how hate can be caused by powerlessness and overwhelm, and how I think the media and the internet is really exacerbating this in people. I think it's really easy to be hateful of the world and of human nature and humankind when we're constantly bombarded with information on all the most egregious and horrible acts going on in the world and in our own country, particularly when they're tragedies that we have no way to control or can't do anything to change. Humans are genuinely so cruel. Like, they are so cruel, not just, people bullying people on the internet, but like actual genocide and murder and horrible hate crimes and violence. It's very overwhelming. And when you feel powerless and overwhelmed and out of control, and you're constantly bombarded with these images and news stories of the most horrible things happening, it makes sense that hatred would be a response to that. And it also makes sense for it to overwhelm you to the point where you just break down and cry and like sleep in your bed with the blinds shut all day because you can't cope with life, because it's just so easy for these kinds of images to overwhelm us. As humans, we're naturally wired to focus more on the negative than the positive, and to focus more on threats, because that's how you survive, is by focusing on threats and taking them seriously. That the fact that the news media and tabloids and so on are constantly telling us about, children who have been killed, or mass shootings, or horrible tyrannical things going on in other governments would make us experience so much anger and hatred and resentment. Like, if you read a story randomly, and I feel like the media and your iPhone is bombarded with stories like this, but like a simple story like, someone decided to skin their neighbor's dog or something. Like, your reaction, if you're a normal human and you haven't learned how to detach yet, like I haven't, your reaction is gonna be hate. Like, I hate whoever did that. What a horrible person. And if you don't know how to regulate your emotions or turn things off when you're starting to get too overwhelmed, it can make sense for that hatred to kind of just take over your life for a while. And when it comes to powerlessness and overwhelm, as well. I do want to talk about addiction and hatred towards objects, for instance, and how you can hate and love something at the same time. For instance, heroin, you love it because it feels so good and it takes away your problems for a while and so on, but you hate it because you are literally powerless to this substance. It has completely taken over your life and controls you. And naturally, when something is controlling you and you feel powerless, you're gonna hate that thing. Or if a more relatable example is, say, chocolate. When you're on a diet, you know it tastes so good and you love it, you just love chocolate, but you hate it because like you literally can't stop eating it, and now you're obese and like now you have health problems and so on and so forth. Like there is an element of powerlessness and overwhelm when it comes to hate. And then also with the powerlessness thing, I do feel like, and I wish there was more studies on this, there probably are, I just haven't looked it up, but hatred is also experienced in response to powerlessness when somebody has hurt you. I think anyone who has experienced either something horribly traumatic and been the victim of a crime that someone else committed to you, or if you've just been like cheated on or broken up with or dumped by the love of your life, or like if someone stabbed you in the back, like a friend or something, I think most people can relate to feeling hatred towards that person and even wishing suffering upon them. And I think the reason that people do this psychologically is that it kind of gives you more power and control over a situation that you had no power or control in, or if you did kind of have some control over, to try and not focus on those things by purely blaming the other person if it's, say, a breakup or something. And there has to be some kind of purpose for hatred. It's not like it just occurs out of the blue. I get that humans want to make sense of everything, like the whole everything happens for a reason, which I don't believe. Some things happen for no reason, like literally all the time. But I do think hatred serves obviously a lot of purposes emotionally, whether it's feeling like you could regain control, externalizing self-hatred so you don't have to deal with it and not self-destruct, whether it's in terms of regulating society, whether for positive or negative reasons. Obviously, hating an entire ethnicity usually is a negative thing to do in a society, but there are also positive regulators in terms of hate.
God, I just hate slavery so much. Slavery's the worst.
But I also imagine that hating on people just feels good. If it didn't feel good, why are there so many catty bitches in the world? I don't fully know the purposes of hate, the psychological reasons behind it, whether or not it can be a positive force or not, or whether if it was completely eradicated somehow, like through some magic pill that everyone took, if that would be a better world or not. I leave that to you, dear viewer, to argue about in the comment section. But on to the next section. I do want to talk about the disappointed idealist. So as George Carlin said, you scratch a cynic and underneath is a disappointed idealist. I definitely think that this is true in the case for a lot of people, myself included. A lot of people hate the world or hate our species because it's not living up to the standards that we set for the world or for our species, and it's extremely frustrating. We want things to be better than they are, and when they don't live up to those standards, yeah, it's easy to hate. Like, it just is. And this disappointed idealist trope, of course, goes hand in hand with the powerlessness and overwhelm. Again, you want to create a world that is just and fair or fruitful or artistic or creative or whatever it is that you think the world should be, and you can only do so much as one person, that when that is not achieved, it can feel absolutely overwhelming how much the world is not how you want it to be, and that could definitely lead to despair, self-hatred, hatred towards the world and towards others, and so on. Obviously, I don't think Carlin necessarily hates the world. I know he thinks that the species was a failure and so on, and he gets angry, but that anger is that cynicism, which is a result of the idealism, like still desiring humanity to change and kind of scolding or berating humanity to change, even though you yourself may have ultimately given up on it.
And I just don't care what happens to this country. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. So, and you know what, the only anger there is, and I recognize one in my voice there, you know what that is? It's really a reflection of disappointment and disillusionment and being let down by my species. We had such great possibilities, and they're not being realized.
And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on misanthropy and art and so on, I do have a video on that. It's very controversial. It's my most disliked video and so on, but maybe you'll like it. But I think a character that also embodies this disappointed idealistic trope is Anton Ego from Ratatouille. If you haven't seen Ratatouille, it's unironically one of my favorite movies. I remember being a child watching it in the movie theater, and when Ego does his introduction with the chef, I was literally speechless.
You're slow for someone in the fast lane.
And you're thin for someone who likes food.
I don't like food, I love it. If I don't love it, I don't Swallow.
Basically, that scene was like a core moment in my childhood development because I was like, that is everything I want to be: scrupulous, uncompromising, idealistic. And unfortunately, all those traits have just led me to be like a self-hating, depressive perfectionist, but I am trying to work through that. But what I like about that movie too is it also shows the trope of haters becoming the biggest fans, which makes sense because hate and love are both very passionate emotions. Like they say, the opposite of both of them is apathy. But if you think about like who haters are, there are definitely haters who hate watch content or always come back to content and leave the same hate comments over and over again and dedicate all this time and energy to the people that they claim to despise. And to me, that seems like fan behavior. That seems like what fans do. And in that circumstance, when it comes to haters really being the biggest fans, I think it's the disappointed idealist thing. You see something in somebody where you're like, you have potential, like you could do something, but you're not doing the thing that I want you to do. And I'm gonna hate on you until you start doing what I want. And obviously that person is probably not going to do what you want because they're their own person with their own desires. If you want to do something that bad, do it yourself. But it makes sense for some people who are very highly critical of others to hate the people who they actually kind of respect. There's also a whole trope in fiction called the enemies to lovers trope, which is exactly what it sounds like. Characters who start out hating each other and at the end they become lovers. It's a very popular trope, but that also kind of plays into the whole haters as your biggest fans concept. But for the very last section of this video, I do want to talk about dealing with haters, how to deal with hate, how to deal with self-hate, and so on. And unfortunately, this is not something that I am an expert in. If you have seen my Misanthropy video and you've been watching my content since, you'll know that I have improved a lot in my life in terms of not being so hateful, because I was the kind of person who hated the whole world and everyone in it and so on when I was like a young teenager, and I'm a lot less hateful now. But it is really hard not to take things personally when people are mean to you, particularly if you already hate yourself, because then it's like just more fire to the flames or whatever. I don't know if that's an actual phrase. But it also feels bad, for instance, if someone's hating on you because you feel bad for them. Like they're putting you in a position of power over them for no reason. And they're also very clearly hurting inside and they're taking it out on you. And it's sad to know that so many people are suffering. Like when I see hate comments, it like that are not even on my videos, like on other people's videos, it makes me genuinely sad. And also what haters are doing are accusing you of making them feel some kind of way, when obviously you can't really make someone feel something. And so that kind of puts a responsibility on you, or like the illusion of a responsibility, and when you feel like you're failing that and you're making someone feel bad, well, that obviously makes you feel bad. And of course, I can't really fully relate to people who express their hatred outwards, like in terms of violence or saying mean things to people and so on. I mean, it's not like I've never been mean to somebody before, but usually it's people who I know very well and we get into like a personal fight and so on. I'm not mean to strangers generally. But I assume people who lash out at others probably do it as a defense mechanism to avoid doing it to themselves, to kind of just push that hate on somebody else for once and have like a sigh of relief, because finally you're not hating on yourself, you're hating on somebody else. And so if that's the case for you, I'll give you a little bit of advice, I guess, when it comes to dealing with those negative thought spirals of self-hatred when they occur, whether it's triggered by an insecurity when you see someone doing better than you, or for any of the other reasons that I mentioned. And I don't have the best advice, and I'm working on those negative spirals right now. But I've been in therapy for like 2 weeks, which makes me an expert, according to YouTube, to talk about mental health and advice. But one thing that my therapist said was that right now in my head I have a judge, and everything that I do wrong or everything that I think about myself is a judgment, like I am a failure, I am worthless, I am lazy, I am unsuccessful, I am blah blah blah. And he's like, you need to stop having that judge in your head and start having a lawyer, like an advocate. Start like pleading your case. Like when my judge is like, you're lazy. Sorry, the battery died, I had to recharge it. But basically what my therapist was telling me is that I have a judge in my brain and I don't have a lawyer, and I need both. And that way, for instance, if my judge in my head is saying I'm lazy, my lawyer can be like, actually no, like you did this, you did this, you did this, you're working on that, like standing up for myself, like having someone to stand up for myself. And obviously sometimes, you know, your judge, I don't want to say is going to be right if you have a very harsh one like me, but they might be saying things that you kind of need to understand. Like maybe your judge is telling you you're a broke bitch, you're financially unstable, you're going to end up homeless, you're such a piece of shit. Then maybe your lawyer could be like, you know what? I understand I haven't been the best with money lately, but I have a plan, I'm gonna be doing this, and like start building towards things. Like stop being so harsh and judgmental and mean all the time and start actually like advocating for yourself. You have to find some part of you who doesn't hate you, even if you have to make it up at first. Like if you don't have that, try and imagine like standing up for a friend or somebody and then doing that for yourself. And this can be really hard at first because if you're like me, the thoughts are so overwhelming and so rapid fire, and there's so many all the time of just every horrible thing you could ever think of, just constantly calling yourself that and calling yourself those names over and over and over again at lightning speed. And it's like impossible to challenge every single one of those thoughts as they occur. But my therapist said for that is to charge the one that you think is the most factually incorrect first, one that you could feel like you could argue against the best. And that's helped a lot for me, and it's also helped a lot with like panic attacks and whatnot, because a lot of my panic attacks happen when I get super overwhelmed from all like the negativity and the self-hatred that I literally cannot function. But the reason I bring this up is because when I get the impulse to be hateful to somebody else, it's because that spiral has started within me. And being hateful to someone else, you know, I don't actually do it, but I imagine that the relief would be not having to have that spiral on myself. But once you learn how to actually deal with those insecurities and those spirals, it can actually like really help you not to be so hateful towards yourself or to other people. And again, when something does trigger insecurity within yourself, you can use that information to better your life rather than hating on somebody else and literally not changing as a result. That's me reflecting on what triggers my desire to hate on others so I can try and get in the mindset of haters online. When it comes to dealing with haters, however, recognize that their hate is their own issue, not yours, and is most likely a projection of their own hatred, or is moral righteousness based on the belief you did something evil or wrong, which sometimes they might be right about, in which case you're probably already in deeper trouble than people hating you on the internet. The other thing I want to mention is that sometimes people being haters isn't that deep. I tend to overanalyze things, but honestly, most people on social media are literal children who just want to get a rise out of you or are exploring the ways in which they can affect the world and the people around them. If you argue with a hater, keep in mind they could be 12 years old. Also, quite frankly, a lot of people who hate are just plain dumb. Hate comments are notoriously idiotic, so try not to take it too personally. But yeah, when it comes to dealing with hate, of course, recognize that you literally cannot escape it. Like, people are always going to hate you, particularly if you become successful in life or whatever, or the more people who know of your existence. Like, people are always going to say mean things to you every now and again. That's just life. The best thing always is to just ignore it. And then, of course, you know, that's when I'm talking about hate, not like criticism or constructive criticism or whatever. Obviously, two different things. People always conflate that. They hear block out the haters or ignore the haters, and they think, well, how are you ever going to grow then? Like, it sounds like you're just ignoring people who are giving you advice. That's obviously not what I'm talking about. We all know the difference between malice and like being helpful, so. And I will end this video with the iconic rant from Cat Williams. If you know, you already know, but I'll play it at the end anyways, about dealing with haters. But that being said, leave a comment down below if you're a hater, if you've ever dealt with hate and so on, or anything on your mind. And with that, I leave you with Cat Williams.
Just saying, live your motherfucking life. You gotta get your motherfucking hustle. Understand niggas is gonna hate you regardless. Get that out of your head, that fantasy world where niggas ain't hating on you. You gotta be grateful. You need haters. What the fuck is you complaining about? What the fuck do you think a hater's job is? To fucking hate. So let them motherfuckers do their goddamn job. What the fuck is you complaining about? Ladies, if you got 14 women hating on you, you need to figure out how the fuck to get to 16 before the summer get here. The fuck is you mad about? Fellas, if you got 20 haters, you need 40 of them motherfuckers. What is you complaining about? If there's any haters in here right now that don't have nobody to hate on, feel free to hate on me. Sit back there and say my hair ain't luxurious when you know it is, bitch.